You're listening to Inside Lebo, a podcast giving you an inside look at Mount Lebanon, Pennsylvania, produced by Mount Lebanon's Public Information Office.
After more than 2 decades working in youth mental health, Barb Saunders is stepping into a new role at a pivotal moment, not just for her career, but for the growing needs of young people and families across the South Hills. Now serving as Executive Director of Outreach Teen and Family Services, she's focused on expanding access, listening more closely to the community, and making sure support reaches those who need it most. Hi, I'm Laura Pace-Lilly, Mount Lebanon's Public Information Officer and Mount Lebanon Magazine Editor, in today for Ian McMeans.
And I'm Rachel Windsor, Mount Lebanon's Assistant Public Information Officer and the Senior Editor of Mount Lebanon Magazine. Today's episode is brought to you by Trouvers Jewelry. Barb, welcome. We're glad to have you here. Now, you've spent more than 20 years in youth mental health, and now that you're stepping into this leadership role, why don't you take us back to the beginning? What first drew you to this work?
Sure. I always knew I wanted to work with kids. I was that babysitter. I was the one at family gatherings who pulled the little kids around and did activities and games. When I went to college, I considered being a teacher. And, I was just so taken by my psychology classes and the thought of working with youth one-on-one or in small groups was more appealing to me than having 30 children all day. So hats off to all you teachers out there, but I really wanted a more close personal connection in my work.
So you did start your career doing elementary aged children and families type work. What did those early experiences teach you that shape how you lead today?
Oh, so much. So when I started, I worked in a partial hospital program, and that is one step before inpatient hospital. So the children that were referred and that came had some pretty significant needs. Sometimes, significant trauma that had occurred or intense developmental delays, which resulted in verbal, physical aggression, dysregulation, disruptive behavior. When I first started, my inclination was more towards structure, rigid behavior, consequences, discipline. And it was very quick that I found out that that wasn't very effective. And if it was, these kids wouldn't be with us, right? So learning through some of my mentors, the things that worked were relationship. Like, they're going to listen to you if they have a relationship with you, if they know you and they trust you. Kindness, strengths-based approaches. So that's the one part of what I learned in my beginning years. The other part that's been such a stable factor is teamwork. When you work in a partial hospital, you have teachers and clinicians working alongside one another, and you're integrating what you're doing. And there's, at any moment in time, I might be doing a math lesson, and the teacher might have a child, she's trying to calm down. So your roles were very fluid. And I've just always practiced and worked in a team environment, and I like to build that wherever I go.
Absolutely. So as you mentioned, over time your work expanded into some school-based mental health services. And so you were helping districts build programs within their own schools. What was driving that shift?
A couple things. Is inclusion and funding. So that was a big change, that let's keep students in. And there was a lot of funding. I believe at the time it was ERA funding that was coming down to communities to help build new services for people at risk and people at need. We had children who would come to the partial hospital and stay for years and years and years. Sometimes they would come in kindergarten and then graduate with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a long time. And that was just the way that it was. And we had to kind of stop and pause and say, wait, should we just assume they're coming back next year? Let's stop and say, do they still need this? And at the same time, the districts were coming to us saying, hey, can you just build what you have in our school so that we can keep them here with us? And so that was that was a lot of fun. And each district that came to us had a different design based on what they needed and what fit for their kids.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question. Keeping kids in their home communities is something you think can make a real difference. Why is that so important?
I guess I want to start by saying that each child is unique and their needs are unique. It's not a fits all. I think there are some, who benefit from a very short-term stay, some with more needs that need a longer-term stay. All in all, whenever possible, it's good that kids can stay in their home community where their peers are, where their family is. When kids were getting sent out to the partial hospital, sometimes it was an hour away from their home district. And after school, they either was too late for them to go out and hang out with other kids, or they just didn't know other kids because they weren't in band and soccer and, at the neighborhood park with them. They were, off in another area. So I just think youth can be more successful if you can build a therapeutic environment where they're at. So the more you can impact the home and the school, they'll feel accepted and respected, and they'll thrive.
So before stepping into this role, you served on the Board of Outreach. So what would you say stood out to you about the organization from your perspective as a board member?
Yeah, I think I've shared before that same warmth and caring that you feel from the staff, you feel that from the board. They are a bunch of very committed individuals that believe in mental health awareness, anti-stigma, and making sure there is a place in this community where parents feel safe and comfortable to bring their children for help. But during a very stressful, difficult time, they're very committed. They're not just there to serve a role and show up once a week and take a vote. It's very hands-on.
So you've talked about that culture of warmth and caring. How do you preserve that while you're thinking about growth?
Well, you have to model it, right? So I truly believe in the parallel process. How I treat the employees and the staff should parallel how they're treating and working with the youth. So being kind, being respectful, encouraging their strengths, celebrating successes, and getting their input into what works and what doesn't, because they know best. And the same should be happening with the youth, right? Tell me what works for you, So, basically modeling is really important to me.
Great, thank you. We're going to take a quick break with a word from our sponsor, Trouvers Jewelry, and when we come back, we'll talk more about what's ahead for outreach.
Looking for that perfect piece of jewelry? At Trouvers Jewelry, you're not just a customer, you're part of the family. Locally owned by Mount Lebanon residents Rob and Kay Trouver, Trouvers has specialized in exquisite craftsmanship and custom jewelry design for over 30 years. Rob is an expert goldsmith, ensuring your jewelry is created with the utmost skill and care. Whether you're looking for something timeless or one of a kind, Trouvers delivers it all. Visit us at the corner of West Liberty and Piermont Avenue or check us out online at trouvers.com. At Trouvers, it's personal.
Welcome back. We're talking with Barb Saunders, Executive Director of Outreach Teen and Family Services. In this part of the conversation, we're looking ahead at how outreach is planning for the future, what today's youth are facing, and how the organization hopes to grow its impact across the region. So Barb, one of your key priorities is launching a community needs assessment. Why is it so important to go directly to families and youth to ask what they need?
All too often I see leaders in important positions that are very smart with a lot of degrees and a lot of experience come to a room and come to the table and have long conversations about solving the world's problems. But they forget to ask the people who are directly involved. And that's where you need to start. Your staff know what's going to work and what's not going to work. They know what you're seeing, and they know it in a different way. It's not just what's on paper, right? They're living it, working it, and I also believe that families are the expert in their children. We may be experts in mental health, but they know their children best. And same with youth. I want them to tell us, we know their needs out there, but how can we meet them and where? Is it one-on-one? Is it in a group? Is it at our office? Is it out at the school? Is it at the library? Where would you go to get help, and how would you like it delivered?
So one of the things that people may not know is that Mount Lebanon Municipality actually allocates tax funds to go to outreach to ensure that services are available for residents, and also outreach is an amazing facilitator for getting grants and support from nonprofits and foundations and other communities. So for that, what kind of services can residents get from outreach?
Well, we typically do not have a wait, so the access is very easy. And the first 2 sessions are at no cost. And then after that, we can look at insurance or a sliding scale or a subsidized lower rate than you would pay at a private practice clinic. So I think that's what makes us different than other private practices, that we have accessibility and affordability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a really great offering for Mount Lebanon residents to be able to utilize at least 2 free services and get the help that they need. So going back to your vision for outreach, you're also thinking long-term about making outreach more visible and expanding beyond Mount Lebanon. So what does that look like 10 years from now?
One thing that is already underway is having a lot of community conversations and visiting a lot of other organizations that are similar to outreach. And some of the feedback that I've received so far is taking those services that we offer and putting them in places where youth and parents are already convening, so that they take advantage of them more often. So this might be at the library, this might be at the opening day for lacrosse, it might be in one of the schools, it might be an assembly at the schools, but making sure that we're taking that messaging out and providing education and resources to where youth and families are already convening. On the same time, we really would like to see the clinic and office be more utilized. We would like to see a drop-in clinic where you can come for socialization and tutoring and wellness activities and not just counseling. I think for that we need a different space and a bigger space, but our hope is to be able to really broaden what we can offer that attracts youth and family in, and we don't just provide sessions, but we're able to provide a variety of activities that engage youth.
So one of the things you've said you've dealt with a lot in your organization is that things are constantly changing. What sort of issues are you seeing the kiddos dealing with now with regard to mental health? What are you seeing out there?
I can say that our data is showing anxiety as a strong #1 referring reason. And I've also, through talking with different community members and some of the schools and the local police, we're seeing a disengagement from school. Kids are just not connected or engaged to school, especially at that high school age. Also, the concern with what youth are seeing on their phones and how easily they're getting to sites and information that's not healthy. And also dangerous for them. And I think all 3 things, the anxiety, the disconnection, and some of that content that they're seeing is really all due to that social media that's happening, and less in-person activities, less one-on-one socialization, less group activities. We need to help youth get more away from their devices and more connected with each other.
Mm-hmm. And you've expressed interest in expanding some of the youth-driven initiatives like the College Crew podcast and advisory board. So why would you say it's so important to give young people a voice in the work that outreach is doing?
that's really what's going to drive it. In some of the places where we visited, it's all designed and led by youth. And that's why they're so successful. The kids will tell you what they want, what they don't want. And it's just amazing. I think we need to go directly to the source.
Mm-hmm. Oh, fantastic. That podcast is amazing. So before we wrap up, we'd love to end on a more personal note. What do you do to relax and recharge?
I like to do a short meditation every morning, and that really helps me to calm and focus for my day. And I love to exercise. I like a variety of exercises. I like to run. I like to do boot camp. I like to bike. I also like to do yoga. So exercising, getting not necessarily a lot of sleep, but good sleep is important to me. So I track that on my Fitbit watch. And really what is most important to me is being a mom and having just such a wonderful relationship with my adult children. And my husband is such a big support to me too. So whenever the four of us are together, that just warms my heart.
That's awesome. And finally, what would you say excites you most about this next chapter, both for you and for Outreach?
I am loving my job. I mean, I just started, but I'm really loving it. I love listening, learning, and developing. So what can we create, based on all of this feedback that we get? How can we do it better, different? And that's not to say that what's happening right now is not good, but you always want to be growing, right? And improving. So I'm fortunate that there's such an incredible foundation in place for me with regards to relationships and really the perspective of Outreach. It's very beloved and it's wonderful. And so I'm excited to really do anything I can to take it to the next level to reach more youth and families.
Oh, thank you. Barb, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, we know how busy you are over there at Outreach. Thanks for sharing both your experience and where you'd like to take the organization. For people who want more information, you can go to their website at outreachteen.org. And that's it for us for this edition of Inside Lebo, sponsored by Truver's Jewelry, produced by Marsha Morgenstern, with music by Drew Monod and graphics by Amy Robinson. Be sure to subscribe for future episodes, and we'll see you next time with more from Mount Lebanon.
Thanks for listening to Inside Lebo, produced by Mount Lebanon's Public Information Office. Learn more about all things Lebo at mountlebanon.org or by following our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages.